Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're going to talk about convolution. And usually when you hear that term, you think of a space or a guitar cab, simulating a guitar cabinet, things like that. But today we're going to use it more for sound design purposes. And there are some really interesting applications of it. But before we do that, we're going to have to talk about exactly what it is. And I'll try to make it fairly simple, the definition. And it is actually a pretty simple concept. But anyway, let's dive in. So the clearest definition I found is from the book Computer Music Synthesis, Composition, and Performance by Charles Dodge and Thomas A. Jerse. One way to conceptualize convolution is as a filtering process in which one signal is passed through a filter whose frequency response is the spectrum of the other signal. Because multiplication is commutative, it is not possible to state which input is the one being filtered and which determines the parameters of the filter. They essentially filter each other. However, passing a sound through a filter that varies dynamically in sympathy with the spectrum of another sound has the potential to yield some musically interesting results. So we have to think in terms of the two signals. One is the original signal and one is the impulse response, which is basically what we're passing the signal through. So for this presentation, I took a few different sounds, and one of me saying the word convolution, and a few different ones, some original samples that I took. So normally when you have convolution, you have a room for the impulse response, which is essentially a noise. It's a sweep of a noise spectrum, or even if you use like a snare drum, that would work. So it's usually a very short tone. So if we reverse that and put the noise at the beginning as the original signal, and I did some noisy samples, some like a bell string of these little bells. Also some bean pods, which is kind of like a shaker thing. So we're using that as the original source, and then for the impulse we'll maybe use something more melodic or something having more of a harmonic spectrum, like a guitar or a piano. So this is kind of the opposite way to approach it. And then obviously we'll go the other way too. But we're going to mix it up with a few different examples. So hopefully this will give you some ideas of things to pop in your impulse response plugin. I'm just using the one that comes with Cubase, but there's also one in Logic called Space Designer. So really you could use anything. And it opens up a whole world of cool effects you can use, and just creating your own textures for your compositions, rather than just using predetermined samples or whatever. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so the first sound we're using is this bell string, which is a string of these tiny bells that I put together. It's pretty kind of in the noise spectrum, although there is maybe some tone to it. It's very short though, so it's more perceived as a noise element. Second one are these bean pods that I found and I dried out. So it's kind of like a shaker, like a gourd or something like that. Once again, very short sound, kind of noisy. But also what I did with these is we think in terms of, they're more like clouds of sounds and not just one hit, which is kind of an interesting approach, I think. Because what that's going to do is, with every sound of the impulse response, it's going to fire the original sound again. So you're going to get this kind of cloud effect. So having a string of sounds rather than just one burst in a room. And what it does is going to combine the harmonic spectra of each sound into one. And that's really the important thing about this, is, like we mentioned in the definition, is that the sounds are kind of filtering each other. So it's really interesting, and is really so much it's really endless what you can do with it. I mean, essentially you could pass like a voice, and we're going to do some of this, a voice through like piano, a resonant piano, or any other instrument. And what happens is the voice, almost like a vocoder, the voice will take on the spectra of the instrument that it's passing through. And some other sounds I'm using are, you may have seen this in my other video, but the Passerelle. And I'm using the spring instrument that I created with the garage springs. And also probably my guitar samples that I did, the friction guitar samples. And we'll throw in some other stuff like some piano and some maybe marimba, things like that. So it should be fun. So here we go. Here we are in Cubase. And let's first go through the samples again quickly. So here's the bell string one. So that was kind of high pitched. So what I did was I pitch shifted it down. And here's the beam pod one. And I did the same with that. I pitch shifted it down. Now these are all mono samples, so looking back I could have sampled it with two mics and got stereo, and then maybe cooler to have some stereo effects. But this is kind of a proof of concept thing, so just wanted to see what we'd get with all this. So I'm pretty happy with the results, but we'll get to that. This is that spring instrument that's bowed. So there's a lot of nice overtones in there. So we're going to get some interesting stuff with that. Me saying convolution. Passerelle. And then the friction guitar. So we have some short sounds, some noisy sounds, and we have some with a lot of like harmonic spectral content. So let's start with so what I did was I took all those and put them into the, let me show you what I did here. This is the impulse response. So this is the reverence, which is Cubase's impulse response. I don't know why I took this picture here. That's weird. It takes like random pictures. But anyway, so I dropped all of them into this and save them as presets. For the friction guitar, I found that the bean pod, using that as the original sound, was pretty interesting. So let's listen to that. So that's pretty cool, actually. And since I have the friction guitar in, since I have that in the contact instrument, we could play that through that. But you'll notice that the bean pod impulse response adds a nice sheen of that noise, kind of cloudy, really cool, like it gives it a nice ambient sound. I mean, it is ambient as it is, but it just gives it that extra layer, I think. Now the Passerelle, if you remember those samples, it's kind of like a pretty like dissonant sort of sound and kind of very raspy. So it's a little harsh. So I would probably, and we might do that now, probably EQ it a little bit. But let's listen to, this is with the bell string going into it. So see how it keeps firing the sample? That's kind of interesting. It creates interesting texture. And then let's try it. So that was a pitch shifted one too, so this is with the bean pod. I kind of like the timbre of the bean pods because it's a little more mellow than those bells. And I think using something like wood blocks could be cool. It gave me a lot of ideas of different things to do. some warmer kind of woody tone is nice for this kind of thing. Now another interesting thing was combining two long sounds like the Passerelle and the, let's say we'll take like, actually I put the voice through it. Which created a lot of resonant frequencies, so that wasn't that really effective. But what I was saying was, let's combine, let's take this friction guitar and combine it with this. So we have two kind of longer sounds here. Let's see what this sounds like. From the Passerelle in that guitar sample too, so they're combining. Yeah, I like that. So that's kind of pretty cool. So the next one is the spring instrument. So let's think about that. That's kind of a long bowy thing. So what I would try with this would be, we could try the bells again. Let's see. It's going to be probably harsh, but actually no, that's pretty cool. Oh yeah, I like that. It's kind of eerie. That's some nice sound design stuff, I think. Keeps feeding too. And I think also this the bean pod one that we pitch shifted might be cool. Let's try that. Yeah, that's a cool soundscape. Now let's try adding something longer like this guitar thing with that. Let's check that out. Stuff gets out of control, but so what, you get a lot of resonant frequencies. So what I would do, let's pull this down a little bit. It's already down, and then let's check that out. But you could sculpt it, where you get this build up here and things like that. Kind of sculpt it, That's actually really cool. I want to bring some of the bass out. Or whatever. Really nice soundscapes, things like that. So for the convolution one, that's the vocal one. I really don't know what this is gonna produce, to be honest, effect-wise. So let's check it out. Start with some the bells there, bell string. Kind of scary. This could be cool. Let's check out with the beam pads. So obviously you could put anything you want in there. You could recite like a whole poem or something. Get some cool stuff. It's a little different than a vocoder. It's similar, but a vocoder kind of takes more just the sibilances or the phonetic parts of the sound. Whereas this is, we're multiplying the frequencies of both sounds equally, so here's the bell string. So this should be interesting because I want to excite that with longer tones. So actually, I'm curious about using the bean pod through the bell string. So that could be, let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, it's just going to be like crickets. So, I think with this, longer sounds are going to work a little better. What about this guitar sample? And by the way, we're going 100% with these as far as the mix, so we're mixing them completely. But you could dial one back, which we'll probably do when we get to the piano stuff. So anyway, that's not as interesting, because what that's doing really is kind of creating a space with the noise, kind of the traditional way to use the convolution. So let's think bean pods. This is actually cool. This is bow drone, the spring instrument through the bean pods. Yeah, I like what that's doing to it. It's gonna go on for a little bit. And we have the bowed Passerelle. This guitar one, let's see what that. Oh, that's nice. Bringing that nice airy element up top, which I like. Pretty mesmerizing, actually. So the next thing I did was I took the piano. Let me just show you what this looks like. Took the Giant here, and I put it through. We're using the bean pods for this, which is that's kind of the one I like the most out of a lot of these experiments. But so let's check this out. So I did a mix with this, so I did 83% mix for this. And you could go less, so let's bring it down. Let's bring it down to like 50. that's really cool. I really like that. It has all those nice trails. Just goes to show, like, a little thing like that. I didn't really expect much out of the beam pods, to be honest. But it turns out to be kind of the winning thing. But I think, I mean, this gave me ideas to kind of try it with, like I said, wood blocks and things like that. So the next thing I did was, this turned out pretty cool too, is I ran the clarinet through the friction guitar. So that's a weird idea, and you wouldn't think it would work, but actually it's kind of cool timbre. It's creating an interesting timbre because we have the strings mixing with the odd harmonics of the clarinet. Actually, I've always liked the combination of strings and clarinet. So it's a little more like bell-like, soft. Interesting, actually. And I have it at 100%, I think. But if we pull it back a little, then we might get too much clarinet, but... Yeah, see, I don't... That works with the piano, but not with this, so I like to keep it at 100. That's a nice texture, I think. And this is something very unique. Like, you can't really produce a sound like that without using this technique, I think. So in that way, it's interesting. So let's move on from that. But also something to be aware of is the friction guitar sample is rooted in D. So I think if you play stuff in D, it's going to sound better. Like, watch, if we play something in like E flat minor. See, it sounds a little... It's going to sound stranger because it's pulling away from that D sonority. But that's a cool effect too, you know? So yeah, I like this combination actually. It's really interesting. But anyway, let's it's cool the way it fades out too. Alright, so the final thing is, I mean, we could go on forever with this, but I just wanted to show you a few things. So the final thing I did was marimba as the original sound going through the friction guitar again. So it's interesting timbre because we have that woody timbre. And let's actually experiment with the balance a little bit. So I took down some of these resonant frequencies here, but let's go like 80% and see what that sounds like. Yeah, not really crazy about that. I mean, it's kind of cool, but I would probably keep it up a little. I mean, keep the mix all the way up. It's pretty mesmerizing anyway. So yeah, I think we like the clarinet and the piano one. But anyway, I just want to show you guys some of that. And there's so many things you could do with it, and hopefully you can try your own thing. I'd love to know what if you guys try this, what you do, and what's successful. All right. Yeah, please tell me in the comments if you end up doing this and what you come across and what you think is working. I think experimenting with voices could be cool. Not kind of like choir stuff. Yeah, I mean, I could try that too, but I think, I don't want to make this video super long, so. But yeah, that's a cool possibility, I think, using choir and then maybe some of these percussive elements. To sort of excite that, so have the choir be the impulse response. But like I said, the tonality plays into it, like as far as what the root notes are of whatever you're putting in there. Anyway, yeah, I think it's really interesting though. Okay, we'll see you guys on the next video. Okay, bye.